Well, I went to the VA and they took out my lungs, and they never saw a man recover like me. Well, I went to the VA and they took out my stomach. I grew up in a small mining community in eastern Kentucky in the hills. There wasn't much around there. There was a church that didn't have a minister and a general store that was very small, and a one-room schoolhouse. The law in the town did not exist. There were gunfights occasionally. I saw my dad get in a gunfight. It was probably my first memory of anything was him in a gunfight with a couple of guys. That's an interesting way to grow up. My mom used to send me out after blackberries so she could make blackberry pies. And before I would go out, she would tape my pant legs to my boots so the rattlesnakes wouldn't go up my pant legs. Yeah, I should probably go to jail for that today, but that's the way it was. There were a lot of stories about Daniel Boone, so every little boy wanted to be like Daniel Boone, and we all had Bowie knives, and we went out and we made paths and built log cabins and camped out a lot and hunted a lot. I had my first rifle when I was 9 years old. When I was 10 years old, I went a little too far out in the hills one day and got turned around and couldn't figure out how to get back. And I ended up gone for 3 days before I finally got back. Everybody was happy to see me. I thought they were going to beat me to death, but it didn't happen. I did not want to move to the city. I did not want to leave where I was comfortable. And when I got to the city, I really didn't want to be in the city. I had to fight my way to and from school. It was a really rough neighborhood. It was a daily thing. Fights were a daily thing. It was just a way of life for a long time. Something interesting happened while I was in high school. The Vietnam War started. Everybody was going. There was a draft at the time. Everybody was afraid of the draft. I, on the other hand, had a scholarship to go play football in college, so I went off to college. But while I was at college, I felt guilty because all my friends were being killed in Vietnam. Consequently, I enlisted in the Marine Corps the summer after my first year of college. I have no excuse for going in the Marine Corps other than temporary insanity. But all of my upbringing prepared me for that. Even though I didn't know it at the time, I was actually being groomed to be a good Marine, and ended up in Vietnam. I got the name Thumper when I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps. The drill instructors were like just beating the holy crap out of us every day. And then one day, the drill instructor called me over and he says, "You know, we're not allowed to hit you, but there's no rule that says you can't hit each other. And so you're going to be my company Thumper. And when somebody screws up, I'll call out their name and then you'll go knock them out." And so I became Thumper. It was a very dangerous job. Cason was very isolated. It was isolated from everything. General Westmoreland, who was in charge of the war, had claimed that the Marines could not be defeated in Cason. He said that deliberately to draw the enemy in there so we could kill them. And it was not a lot of fun to be live bait. I didn't have much of an opportunity to make too many friends because most of the time where I was, we were taking at least 50% casualties. And so you didn't get to know people too long. So after a while, You tried not to make friends. You just kind of stayed to yourself. Watching people die, you go through a whole series of emotions. First, you're hurt and upset, and then you're angry. You want to get even. And after a while, you just kind of get numb to it. I don't know, that's probably the worst part, just being numb to something like that. You didn't have a choice about facing fear. Fear was there. As I've learned over the years going to PTSD counseling, when you get that scared about something, it rearranges your brain physically, and you constantly stay in a fight or flight mode. There's nothing you can do about fear except just be afraid. And people react to it different ways. Some people go crazy, and guys would stand up and get shot just so they didn't have to face it. Me, I really didn't want to die, so I hung in there, but it has affected me the rest of my life. Still does to this day. Coming home was even a story in itself. On the flight home, when we landed in Columbus, the pilot sent one of the stewardesses to take me back to the cockpit. He goes, "I'm about your size. I have some civilian clothes here. You might want to put them on before you get off the airplane." And I didn't quite understand what he was talking about until I got off the plane with my uniform on, and there were protesters. And that just struck me as really weird. It was like being in the Twilight Zone. The PTSD affected me from the time I came back till now. I can deal with it a little bit better now. At first, probably until 1985, 1990, I didn't even realize I had it. I thought everybody else was crazy. And then they finally discovered what it was and started sending us to counseling. Another interesting part of my life started about 25 years ago. I joined the Vietnam Vets Motorcycle Club. And that was another passion of mine that started when I was in high school. I had my first motorcycle when I was in high school, and I've had one ever since. The motorcycle club has been a big asset in my life. And there are a lot of funny motorcycle stories, which I can't tell. But I've had a lot of fun. We've done a lot of political things. We do a lot of charity things. We do a lot of things for veterans. We have fundraisers and provide a lot of money for a lot of different things. And it's given me the opportunity to travel all over the United States on my motorcycle, which is fun. I get a real blast out of like seeing 200 miles to Birmingham, zoom, and I'm off to the races. And then, 500 miles to Dallas, and it just gets me wound up. One of the most pleasurable themes in my life has been music. And I started playing in bands when I was 13 years old, and that was my first experience of getting thrown out of somewhere. So the music theme has just been my main interest all through my life. And I think the reason for that is I saw a lot of sad things in my life. And when you play music, if you do it right, you make people happy, and you get to watch them being happy. That was the most pleasurable thing to me. The greatest pleasure that I had playing music was when we played in Salzburg, Austria, in the home of Mozart, and we were playing songs that I wrote and people were banging on the tables and the walls and hollering "Tu ballet," which means encore in Austrian. And I thought, tears came to my eyes, and I thought, I'm in the home of Mozart, and people are yelling encores for my music. And that was, you can't buy that. That was the most amazing feeling I think I've ever had. Comparatively speaking, life right now is kind of boring. When I was a young man, I had this thought one day of seeing myself sitting on a rocking chair and thinking back about all the things that I could have done. Well, I don't have to do that because I did all the things I wanted to do. Every time you do something, it costs you something else. So it didn't come free, but I got to do a lot of things I wanted to do. And that was good. I'm not sure I'm done yet. Well, I went to the VA and they took out my lungs. And they never saw a man recover like me. Well, I went to the VA and they took out my stomach.